Have you ever felt like you're the one ruining everything good in your life right when things start to feel safe? You pull away. You get the job, then miss the deadline, you meet someone, then disappear, you promise yourself this time it will be different. And it never is. You tell yourself you're broken, lazy, dramatic, too much, too little, all at once. But what if I told you none of that is true? What if the part of you that breaks things is actually trying to protect you? There's a reason you run, and it's not weakness, it's not failure, it's something older, deeper. If you've ever sabotaged something you loved, if you've ever felt like you're fighting yourself, this might be the first time someone explains why. There's a part of you waiting to be heard, and it has something to say. Emily didn't mean to ruin it. The date was going well. He laughed at her jokes, listened, even asked about her art. Not in a polite way, in a real way. She felt something in her chest, warmth, curiosity, maybe even a little hope. And that's when it happened. She said something cold, dismissive, laughed a bit too loud when he said something vulnerable. He looked confused. She felt it instantly. The moment slipped, he shifted. 2 days later, she texted and said she was too busy to keep seeing him. He replied kindly. She cried anyway, and then she did what she always did. Scrolled through TikTok, watched shadow work videos, and told herself, I always do this. But she didn't know why, and maybe neither do you. Maybe you've seen yourself back away right as something begins to bloom. Maybe you've ghosted a job interview, avoided a reunion, deleted a message you meant to send. Maybe you're like Emily, afraid of your own joy. She wasn't always like this. But patterns don't shout when they begin, they whisper. One small moment of silence, one glance that was too long, one sentence you didn't say. And slowly your nervous system builds a map. Safe means small, love means threat, joy means danger. So when things get good, you disappear. Not because you want to, because you were taught to, not in words, in glances, in silences, in what was never said. Emily's story isn't rare, it's just rarely named. And the worst part isn't the sabotage, it's the silence after, the blame, the quiet voice that says, it's me, I'm the problem. She believed that voice for years. Until one day, someone asked her something that changed everything. But before that day, she lived in that loop. And maybe so have you. It started in a room with a beige couch and a quiet woman who didn't interrupt. Emily sat there, arms crossed, legs tucked, pretending she wasn't unraveling inside. She was used to deflecting, making jokes, changing topics, but something about that silence, it invited her. I think I sabotage everything, she said. The therapist didn't flinch, didn't pity, just nodded and asked, what part of you thinks it's protecting you? Emily blinked. Protecting. She came to therapy to fix what was broken, to stop ruining good things, to delete the part of her that always ran. But what if the thing that runs isn't broken? What if it's loyal? That was the first time she heard the word shadow, not the spooky Instagram version, not evil, not toxic, just unseen. The parts of you you had to bury to survive, to be liked, to stay safe. Your anger, your grief, your defiance, your voice. You didn't throw them away, you hid them, and they didn't die, they waited. Sometimes in silence, sometimes in sabotage. Emily felt something shift. The story she'd told herself, I'm just wired wrong, started to crack. What if self-sabotage isn't a glitch but a message? What if it's not your weakness that ruins things, but a younger version of you, trying to keep you alive? That thought terrified her and comforted her all at once. She left that session different, not fixed but curious. She began noticing the voice inside, the one that whispered leave when someone got close, the one that flinched when kindness stayed too long. And instead of fighting it, she asked, what are you afraid will happen if I stay? That question would become the door, and though Emily didn't know it yet, she was already walking through. If you've ever felt like you were the one breaking your own life just to feel safe, try asking the part of you that runs, what are you protecting me from? If you feel brave, drop a word below. One word you've been afraid to face inside yourself. You're not alone, not now, not anymore. Emily was 9 when she learned silence was safer than truth. It happened during a family dinner. Her uncle laughed too loud. Her dad drank too fast. The air was sharp even before anyone spoke. She spilled her orange juice. Her father's hand slammed the table. The glass tipped over, the room went quiet. "You always make a mess," he said, sharp, final. Her mother looked away. No one moved. Emily's hands trembled, but her mouth stayed shut. That was the first time she didn't explain, didn't say it was an accident, didn't cry. She just froze. And a rule was born: be small, be quiet, don't make them mad. And from then on, she became good at disappearing, not literally, but inside. She shrank, her laugh muted, her opinions became a mirror for everyone else's comfort. Because mirrors don't get hit, they don't get blamed, they just reflect. Years later, she'd find herself in a conference room saying yes when she meant no, nodding at bad ideas, apologizing when someone else interrupted her. It was muscle memory, safety disguised as politeness. She didn't connect the dots not until that therapist asked her, "What's your first memory of being told you were too much, too loud, too emotional, too intense?" She didn't cry in session, she laughed. That dry kind of laugh that holds 1,000 tears. Because she remembered, and remembering made everything make sense. All those times she pulled away, made herself smaller, said no to love, were never about self-destruction. They were about self-preservation. Because if being visible meant danger once, the child inside her didn't forget. And here's the thing about your shadow: it doesn't live in the past. It lives now, reacting now, fearing now, protecting now. Even if the danger is gone, the protector stays. So if you've ever found yourself overreacting or pulling back or disappearing, maybe it's not sabotage. Maybe it's memory. A moment your body remembered before your mind could. And the question isn't, "What's wrong with me?" It's, "When did I first decide it wasn't safe to be me?" Because that is where the healing begins. The assignment was simple: write a letter to your fear, to your shame, to the part of you you hate the most. Emily stared at the page for 20 minutes. Nothing came then. One word. Why, that was it. She closed the journal, went to bed, tried to forget. But the next morning, her hand moved before her brain did, and the letter began. "Dear Fear, I hate you, you've ruined everything." She wrote like she was shouting. The pen pressed hard, lines sharp, angry, messy. Then something softened, the words changed. "I know you're trying to help. I just wish you didn't scream so loud." She paused, stared, breathed. And then she flipped the page, wrote back, as Fear. "Dear Emily, I scream because no one listens. I don't want to ruin things. I want to keep you from falling apart again." It wasn't a perfect conversation, but it was the first time she didn't fight the voice inside her. She listened. That night, she dreamed of her 9-year-old self holding a glass, watching it spill, mouth closed, but in the dream she said something. She didn't remember what, only that it felt okay. She woke up with tears on her cheek and a strange peace in her chest. From that day on, she wrote every morning. Sometimes it was fear, sometimes shame, sometimes a part of her that didn't even have a name. Each letter a door to a room she'd locked long ago. And in those rooms were not monsters but messengers saying, "Will you finally see me?" She didn't always understand what they said, but she kept writing, not to fix them but to witness them. Because healing means silencing the parts of you that hurt. It means letting them speak, without interruption. If you've never written to your fear, try. You don't need the right words. You just need a quiet room and a pen that forgives you. And if you feel ready, share one sentence below, something you've never told that voice inside. Not to impress, just to begin. Sometimes the smallest sentence becomes the loudest freedom. He brought her sunflowers. Emily hated sunflowers, but she smiled, said thank you, put them in a vase. That's what she did with kindness. Accepted it, performed gratitude, and waited for it to leave. He didn't leave, he stayed. Messaged good morning, held her hand like it meant something, looked at her like she mattered. And that's when her stomach tightened. When joy arrived, fear followed. She started noticing tiny things, a pause in his voice. A moment he looked at his phone, the way he said, "I'll call you later," not unkind, just normal. But normal felt dangerous, because deep down her shadow whispered, "This is the part where it falls apart." So she preempted it, pulled back, got busy, stopped replying right away. He noticed. Of course he did. And when he asked gently, "Is everything okay?" she said, "I just need some space." He gave it. And she filled that space with doubts, with assumptions, with every reason he might leave until he actually did. Because no one stays in a house with locked doors, Emily cried, not because he left but because she made it happen, again. That night she didn't write to her shadow, she yelled at it. "Why do you always ruin this for me?" The reply came slower this time. "Because love once meant pain and I'm trying to stop it before it starts." Emily stared at the page, the words blurred, and suddenly she remembered something she'd buried. The first boy who told her she was beautiful also told her she talked too much. The teacher who praised her art also mocked her for crying in class. Kindness came with knives. Praise came with punishment. Love meant loss. So no wonder she ran. No wonder her nervous system tell the difference between a hug and a trap. This wasn't failure. It was memory wrapped in instinct. Emily didn't forgive herself that night, not yet, but she understood, and that was a beginning. Because when you realize your sabotage is just your body trying to keep you safe, everything changes. You stop calling yourself broken, and you start asking, what part of me is still scared? And when that part answers, don't fight it, just say, "I hear you." Because sometimes that's all it ever wanted, to be heard before it had to scream. The question echoed for days. What part of me is still scared? Emily didn't answer it, not right away. She walked with it, took it to the coffee shop, to the grocery store, even to the shower. And slowly the answers came, in fragments, in memories. In body chills she couldn't explain. One morning she sat down with a blank page. This time, not to write to her shadow but to listen. She drew a circle, wrote the word "me" in the center. And around it she listed the parts. The overachiever, the runner, the angry one, the quiet girl, the one who always smiles. She didn't judge them, just named them. And for the first time she saw herself as a collection, not a contradiction. Her therapist called it integration. The practice of bringing the hidden into the light, of turning the saboteur into an ally, not by force, but by presence. Emily created a ritual every morning, a 5-minute check-in. She'd ask, "Who's loud today?" Some days it was the overachiever, demanding more; other days the quiet girl begging for rest. She didn't argue, didn't fix, just noticed. And that noticing changed everything. Because when you notice something, it stops needing to scream. Emily added breathwork, not fancy. Just 3 deep inhales, 3 soft exhales, with one thought: "I'm allowed to be here." And slowly she felt it, the shift. Sabotage became signal, fear became feedback, silence became invitation. This wasn't magic, it was maintenance. Like watering a plant you forgot was yours. It didn't bloom overnight, but it leaned toward the light. And in that leaning she learned the most important thing of all: you don't have to fight the shadow, you just have to sit beside it long enough for it to trust you. So if you're still waiting for permission to stop running, this is it. Start with one question. What am I afraid would happen if I let myself succeed? Write it down. Don't rush the answer. Let it arrive like a letter from a version of you still hiding in the dark. And when it does, don't fix her, just thank her. She kept you alive. Now it's your turn to bring her home. Emily bought a cheap voice recorder. Small silver, could fit in her palm. She didn't want anything fancy, just something she could talk to. Because writing was good, but some emotions needed sound, volume, breath. She called it shadow dialogues. Not therapy, not performance, just honesty. She'd hit record. and ask a question. Why did I panic when he said he loved me? Then she'd wait not for an answer from the air but from within, and the voice would come, sometimes shaky, sometimes cruel, sometimes heartbreaking. I panicked because love never stayed. I panicked because now he can leave. I panicked because I didn't believe him. Each session felt like surgery. But with no anesthesia, she didn't try to fix, the voice didn't argue, didn't shame. She just kept asking and kept listening. Some days the voice said nothing, just silence, just breath, and that was sacred too. One night she asked, "What do you wish I knew?" And the voice answered almost like a whisper, "That I never wanted to ruin your life. I just wanted to keep you alive." She cried not because it hurt but because it was the first time she believed it, that her fear was not a villain, just misunderstood, that the shadow wasn't trying to end things, it was trying to protect the child who once lost everything. Emily saved those recordings not to replay but to remember that healing isn't loud, it's quiet. It's ordinary, it's choosing to stay when everything in you wants to run, and each time she chose to stay something changed, a little less panic, a little more breath. She didn't become fearless, she became aware, and that awareness became freedom. So if you're still afraid, still fighting, still vanishing from your own life, maybe it's time to stop shouting over the fear and start asking, what are you trying to say? And then wait with compassion, with breath, with space, because sometimes the scariest part of you just needs someone to finally listen. It was a Tuesday, gray sky, mug of tea cooling by the window. Emily was on the couch wrapped in a blanket, not because it was cold but because something inside her finally let go. Her phone buzzed, a message from the man she almost pushed away. "Thinking of you today. No pressure, just here." She did flinch, didn't draft 3 replies and delete them all. She just wrote back, "Thank you. That means more than you know." And she meant it, not to impress, not to perform, but because for once she felt safe in herself. It wasn't a grand breakthrough. No fireworks, no standing ovation, just a quiet moment where her nervous system didn't scream, where the old panic didn't rise. She noticed it, the absence, and smiled, because sometimes healing doesn't feel like victory, it feels like peace, like drinking your tea while it's still warm, like not checking if the door is locked again, like silence that doesn't scare you. She thought about all the years she'd tried to become someone else, more healed, more productive, less emotional, but the truth, she didn't need to become anything. She needed to return to the parts of her that waited in silence, in shame, in shadow, and now she was starting to arrive, piece by piece, moment by moment. She still had bad days, still got triggered, still froze sometimes when kindness lasted too long, but now she noticed, she named it, she breathed through its hand. That was enough, because wholeness isn't about never breaking it. It's about knowing which part of you broke and holding it without letting it define you. She was not the angry child, not the avoidant woman, not the quiet girl afraid of spilling juice. She was all of them and none of them. She was the space that held them, the voice that listened, the breath that stayed. And that day, that quiet Tuesday, she realized you're not broken, you're brave, you're not too much, you're carrying too much. And if no one ever told you that, let this be the first time you hear it, truly hear it. You're still here, still trying, still listening, still breathing, and that is enough. Healing didn't make Emily perfect. It made her honest with herself. There were still days she woke up anxious, still moments she wanted to run, still nights she scrolled through old texts looking for signs of rejection in places they didn't exist. But now she noticed she didn't punish the panic. She made space for it. She called it the pause. Every time she felt the urge to vanish, to overwork, to say yes when she meant no, she paused. 3 breaths, one question. What part of me is speaking right now? It was usually one of the old voices, the pleaser, the achiever, the silent one. She didn't argue, she acknowledged, and from that space she chose again. Some days she still chose fear, still avoided hard conversations, still felt small in big rooms, but those days didn't mean she failed, they meant she was learning still, because healing isn't a finish line, it's a rhythm, a relationship, a ritual. So She created small rituals, tiny anchors. In her weak Monday morning she wrote letters to whatever part of her felt loudest. Sometimes rage, sometimes grief, sometimes boredom. Wednesday nights she did nothing for an hour on purpose. No phone, no fixing, just presence. Fridays she took long walks without a destination, letting her thoughts wander without grabbing them too tight. She called them returning practices because they brought her back to herself over and over, not to the best version, but to the whole one, the messy, breathing, trying, loving, still learning human. She told herself often, I don't have to get it right, I just have to stay with myself. And in that staying she found something she never thought she'd feel, not confidence, not clarity, but companionship with herself, the girl who spilled juice, the woman who ghosted love, the one who stayed silent. They were all still there, but now they had someone walking with them. So, if you're wondering when will I be healed, when will this end, maybe the better question is, can I build a life that makes room for the parts of me still healing? Because sometimes healing isn't about arrival, it's about return again and again and again. She sat by the window, rain tapping softly against the glass, a quiet morning, just her and her notebook. She opened it to a blank page, took a breath and began. Dear me, the one who stopped talking, the one who tried to disappear, the one who believed safety meant silence. You don't have to hide anymore. You did what you had to do to survive rooms that didn't see you, to endure love that came with conditions, to make it through days that asked you to be smaller just to be accepted. But now safe, and I see you, not just the parts that smile or perform or help everyone else heal. I see the part that's tired, the part that still flinches, the one that still checks for exits even when no one's chasing. You don't have to run anymore. You don't have to sabotage to feel in control. You don't have to push people away to prove they wouldn't have stayed. You are no longer too much or not enough. You are just you, and that is finally enough. I will not abandon you again, not when you panic, not when you mess up, not when you cry, not even when you try to disappear. I will stay. Because you stayed for me all these years in shadow and silence. You carried us both, and now it's my turn to carry you home. She stopped writing, looked at the page, then out at the street, empty, still beautiful in its quiet. She didn't cry this time, she just breathed and whispered, I'm proud of you. To no one and to every part of her that never got to hear it. Not because the work was done, but because for the first time she wasn't doing it alone. She had herself whole, present, listening. So, if you're here, still listening, still feeling, still trying, maybe this is the moment you write your own letter to the part of you that's still in hiding. And if you do know this, it doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be real. Because healing begins with being honest, even in a whisper. So, if something opened in you, if something softened, leave a word in the comments. Just want to say, I'm ready. You don't have to explain, you don't have to perform. You're not broken, you're becoming whole, and this is just the beginning.